This circuit, 30 kilometres southwest of the capital of Bahrain, Manama. It cost 150 million US to build. They first raced Formula One here in 2004. They had, of course, a round of the Formula One Championship back in April. Felipe Massa won that one. It's a good circuit, 3 long straights and broken up into 10 turns.
And a real tricky racetrack to come to terms with for lots of reasons. First gear corner down there at turn 1. Huge passing opportunity, of course, because it's so wide, and typically that invites all kinds of trauma. Minimum speed in that corner, look how slow it is, just 55 to 60 kilometres an hour, and lots of people encouraged by the width of the track to have a crack down there. But try to get the car to turn in, to put its power to the road off that tight first corner and also off the very tight right-hander onto the back straight at turn 4 is a real trick. You clearly need to slip through the air well here as well, 55% of the lap at 100% throttle, and it's a pretty tough racetrack on brakes, just like the Gold Coast and the next event to come down in Tasmania, 3 in a row that really put pressure on the braking performance of the cars.
You mentioned Tasmania coming up, and that's going to be good signs for Garth Tander and the championship as we go back down towards the rear of the grid where we find Craig Lowndes, who's still smiling, and Campbell Little. Boy, have they got a job to do. What is the championship picture? Garth Tander now 512, has an 11-point lead from Jamie Whincup on 501. Rick Kelly third, 481, and Craig Lowndes fourth, 473. Let's run you through the start grid for race 2 of the Desert 400. Of course, how they finished race 1. Winterbottom was just untouchable. He was so comfortable in that car. They asked him to push, and he pushed even further ahead. Stephen Johnson, a great finish for him, his best race finish for the year. Russell Ingall, likewise, he'll start alongside his SBR teammate James Courtney from row 3. Here is positions 7 and 8, Scaife and Will Davison, making it a pretty handy start to the weekend for Jim Beam Racing, although Dick Johnson's enjoying some fishing. Not here, he's back at home.
Updating a little bit of information about James Courtney, who was strong early in the race yesterday and then faded away towards the end. By lap 20, it bent a couple of the butterflies in the inlet manifold, and therefore the car was running a very high idle between 3,500 and 4,000 revs, and the effect that has is it pushes the car ahead through the slow corners, and it makes the car understeer and not respond to the steering input from the driver. That's a drama that you don't need around here. A couple of other people in strife as well. Lee Holdsworth, we saw him in trouble down at turn 1 with Stephen Richards, and Richo served a drive-through penalty for that. Eventually what retired Lee was a broken shock absorber. They decided to put that car away. Team BOC cars together in positions 21 and 22. They've been experimenting with the new 72 vein Alcon brake rotors this weekend, trialling that as an alternative to the 48 vein control rotor that's currently on the cars.
Some pretty handy pace at the rear of the grid. Stephen Richards is down there, Lee Holdsworth, Jamie Whincup, 27-28. Position 29 belongs to Steve Owen from Autobahn, and he'll go alongside with Craig Lowndes.
And what stopped Steve yesterday, because remember he dropped back through the order very early in race number 1 and we were scratching our heads. They had a throttle jam wide open on the car. He tried to fix it. It rectified itself and then did it again, and he decided the best place for that race car was back in the garage.
Team Sierra May Wines, Paul Morris from position 31. So the warm-up lap, away they go. We've had 29 races now for season 2007, 9 different race winners. Winterbottom's victory yesterday was his first race win of the year. Garth Tander has 12 race wins. Craig Lowndes next on the list with 5, Scaife 4, Whincup 3, and Todd and Rick Kelly 2, and Stephen Richards and Winterbottom 1 each. Familiar colours there, the unfamiliar colours, I should say, of Todd Kelly. If this is your first tune-in for the Bahrain International race and you're looking for car 22, don't look for the familiar Holden Racing Team colours. He's donned the Chevrolet scheme for this one.
And when his crew went to look for that car rolling onto the grid yesterday, they couldn't find him. They struggled to find a black Commodore with gold Chevrolet logos on it. They've been selling Commodores up in this region since the late 90s. Got a couple of 100,000 of them in the market up here.
Guys, the track temperature at the moment is probably the warmest we've seen so far here in Bahrain, 36 degrees. The ambient temperature is 30 degrees at the moment. And the consensus along pit lane is that a lot of the teams will try and stay out there on those tyres for as long as they can. So expect some late stops in pit lane.
Can't actually remember a time standing mid-grid as they start to warm up, and the 888 boys walking past and past and past all the way down to the rear of the grid. It's quite unusual to see that sort of stuff. I said to Roland, how long have you been doing this caper? He said, anytime we've been down here, I erase it from our memory. Let's just get on. We scratched our heads yesterday wondering why Lee Holdsworth parked the car. The contact with Stephen Richards broke the rear suspension, trailing arms bent the diff housing. It's the 4th time that Stephen has been in an incident. Gary Rogers said he's not the most popular bloke on our list, but this time he did apologise. They've repaired the GRM car and he'll start the race.
Yeah, back to that 888 that you were mentioning. That was the real clincher, wasn't it? They sent Jamie Whincup back out there and said, let's just rescue this for a better race start position for the second race, because, you know, you see an incident on lap 1 and you think, who started that? Well, pretty much it all started way back in qualifying. When you put yourself in the middle of the field, there's always going to be dramas. Watch the dramas unfold at turn 1. It's an interesting part of the circuit, Neil. Turns 1, 2, 3 and 4. It's so wide, this place, but it just looks so ungainly and clunky for these cars when they go around it.
And you can see even as they come down to turn 9 here, if you come off the racing line, the tone of the track changes, the colour tone, and that indicates that it's dirtier. So when you rush down to turn 1 on the dirty side of the road, you're more prone to mistakes. And then, as you correctly point out, between 1, 2, 3 and 4, it's lowish grip offline. It's first and second gear stuff, so there's a lot of wheel spin, and you're trying to change the direction of the car. So when you've got a lot of rear wheel spin with direction change and 2 or 3 of your nearest and dearest around you, then you know that that recipe is going to ultimately end up in a disaster sometimes. Down the back of the field, incidentally, as we look at the 888 cars, they'll actually get their starting cue from a repeater green flag that's down there, and they've been counselling their drivers to make sure that they understand the right moment to go, because they won't be able to see the start light complex at the front. From apex to apex, from the last corner to the first corner, it's 1,090 metres, so it's over a kilometre down that straight. And as boys will tell you, walking up and down pit lane, they know all about it. And in terms of the straight line run, 100% throttle, it's 800 odd metres down there. So it's an enormously long area. When you're at the back of this grid, you've got a long way to go to get to the front. Formula One style staggering of the grid.
It's a spectacular sight. Such a modern circuit. And it lends itself to some great racing. We're all lined up and ready to go again in the Desert 400. Winterbottom was great in race 1 off the start. Tander went with him. So race 2 again, a pretty clean jump. It'll be a fascinating drag between Tander and Winterbottom down to turn 1. Already contact midfield, I reckon. 1-2 wide into turn 1, and Tander has the advantage. Pushes Frosty wide.
Yeah, well wide down there. Bit of elbowing in the back of the pack. Amazing scene to see 4 and 5 cars wide, and there was some trouble at the back of the pack. I saw one of the 888 cars really crossed up through turn number 2. Look at the traffic jam at 4. Bright's out on the AstroTurf that's been changed for this year. Damage to the left rear on his car. Tander is the leader.
Scary sense of deja vu there, because that's exactly where he went. And Rick Kelly's gone with him. Where Jason Bright went off at turn 4, that's exactly where Paul Morris went off as Jason Richards finds the runoff area. As they lead it around 6. Back up the hill now. They loop around the back of the circuit. Turns 7 and 8. Another long straight. There's Bright. That's the trouble. Struggling from the word go. Todd Kelly rounds up one of the Jack Daniels cars.
Look at the battle at the lead. Winterbottom is having a huge go at Rick Kelly as they run down to turn 9. They were on the dirty side of the road running down there, and job done. So he got a better exit off turn number 8, Winterbottom, and moves up to second.
How's the start from Rick Kelly? Just went with his teammate.
Look at Winterbottom. He's going to have a crack at Tander here. He'll lead him at the end of the first lap. A remarkable bit of pace. Is there a problem?
An enormous amount of grunt from Mark Winterbottom to reclaim the lead.
That was remarkable. I mean, all of a sudden he just rounded them up. I wonder what tyres he started the race on. because the only way you can round up everybody like that in that last half of the first lap is with sheer grip. That car is just working so beautifully well, and he has bolted, rounding up Tander on the front straight, and look at the margin already.
That's ominous signs. He was really comfy, and big contact for Jamie Whincup. He's been clipped by Max Wilson, already in trouble. He's got damage both sides of the rear. And exactly the same spot.
Superficial damage, mate. How's it feel?
On board here with Rick Kelly, that conversation between Mark Dutton and Jamie Whincup. That was down at turn 4, but look at Winterbottom. A remarkable opening couple of laps for the FPR runner, and huge action in the mid-pack on the run down to turn 9 as well. Dean Canto this time having a crack at Shane Price and getting it done. Jason Bargwanna next in that queue.
Let's go through the order as they cross. Winterbottom, 1.6 second lead.
Contact in the main straight, Shane Price and Dean Canto, and Canto massively crossed up in the middle of the straight.
And look at the lockup as a result. Here's
unbelievable!
Contact.
This whole HSV two cars taking each other out. Unbelievable!
Pointing the wrong way.
Yeah, mate, Whincup had a spin as well, mate, so let's just keep our head.
Garth Tander's stuck, and you can hear them talking to him and putting it directly into the championship. Whincup had a spin as well, so let's keep our head. Let's get another bank of points. Extraordinary action.
Gee, that will not go down well in the HSV garage when you've got an advantage like that over your championship rivals.
Bloody gear cup's not working. And we're in trouble here, fella.
Yeah, so the shift cut. Oh, more trouble here for Rick Kelly. Round he goes.
That was a touch with Mark Scaife. They were side by side.
Can't keep up with this. The shift cut's not working on Garth
Settle it
Tander's
down,
car.
mate. Settle it down.
Now the counselling begins, but the madness has already occurred. No such thing as a sure bet in this business, and just goes to prove that it is possible to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory.
John Bow. The Glenford's Racing team has rear bumper damage. He joins along the main straight. Take a breath. Figure out who's doing what. Winterbottom's leading by 5.5 seconds over James Courtney. That's second. Lee Holdsworth has got himself up into third. Stephen Johnson there.
Remember, we've got compulsory pit stops coming any tick of the clock, and Paul Dumbrell is in.
Just let me correct that. Holdsworth was out of play there, so Johnson is actually third, Davison fourth.
Now Lowndes has survived all this. He's up to 12th at the moment. He's in the points. Need to take a breath and figure out what's happening. Winterbottom leads from Courtney, Stephen Johnson, Will Davison, Greg Murphy, Russell Ingall, Dean Canto. This is Courtney. He's second at the moment, but substantial damage around the front of that car. And there's the daylight between the two lead cars. It was 5.5 seconds on the last lap. I'm astonished by some of the things that we've seen in the last couple of minutes. Bargwanna, then Price, then Todd Kelly. Stephen Richards, a huge charge from the back of the field up to 11th. Then Lowndes, there he is, you can see him. John Bow, mechanical black flag for damage on car 111. We know that Bright's come into the pit lane from the damage on lap 1 on that car, but Rick Kelly's in 17th, and I'm trying to work out where Garth Tander is at the moment.
Right,
he's down the order 27th.
Lowndes the best of the movers and shakers. The rest of them in bashes and crashes. Stephen Richards tucked in behind Todd Kelly. So Richo's gone from 24th up to 11th. Holy smoke. They pieced everything together, chucked it on the transporters, came over here, had trouble off the trucks early on, and now they've continued the battle on the track. The Zinger replay showed the initial contact between Andrew Jones and Jamie Whincup. Now Whincup will end up spinning out here towards turn 4, and you'll see that Max Wilson, if we go deep, so that was the contact that spun him around with Lee Holdsworth. And then Max Wilson will come flying around while Jamie Whincup's sitting horizontal to the track. And he collected, bam, just there.
He might get pinged for a dangerous re-entry on that one, but as if things aren't bad enough already.
Oh, dear.
Mind you, you cannot see out the back of the cars at all. So, I mean, it's literally dead reckoning there when you decide to move the car. Now, what about this one? Rick Kelly down the inside on Garth Tander. And he's a long way down there, but GT turns in. And that will raise the blood pressure in that garage. And, of course, there's all sorts of chaos as a result of that. Here it is again from Rick's viewpoint. He thought he was far enough up. And then, of course, the gap narrows. Oh, dear me. And consider the advantage the two of them had over both the 888 cars at that point. Car number 88 is going to get a black flag for the dangerous re-entry back onto the circuit. So Jamie Whincup will tour the pit lane, further adding injury to their weekend.
I was also wondering where the damage came from James Courtney's car. You can see it right there. He ended up crunching into the rear of Stephen Johnson, nowhere to go.
Wow, the pit lane now sees a bit of action as the compulsory stops begin.
Craig's in for rears only. 888, let's make sure we've got the right equipment out, please. Pit lane.
You okay? How's your heart rate?
Just trying to figure out who's where.
They are too. I think everybody's in this boat. Look at that nose to tail Bargwana with Lowndes 40 k's on the electronic limiter.
Go, off you go, mate. Okay, mate, CCS slide off. Should have heaps of clear track here.
Go for lane 3, you're right, straight across, good job. Remember the flame line on the way out,
So Winterbottom just giggling at the moment, laughing all the way home. Margin to spare, not involved in the nonsense. A shame that some of the earlier rounds didn't go their way, or he'd be in this championship battle.
Well, it's all going on down in pit lane at the moment. Cars ducking in left, right and centre. Whoever designed this pit lane, it must have been Rob De Castella or Steve Monaghetti. Fair dinkum, it's long. Todd Kelly's just come in four turns to the rear roll centre adjustment down on that car, Neil.
Something hanging out beneath that car too. Was it one of the jacks?
Looks like it. On the right-hand side.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's one of the air jacks. Courtney's now the race leader. And this one was the contact between Scaife and Rick Kelly. And around they both go.
I don't reckon I've heard as much counselling over the radio in the first few laps.
I tell you what, there's big potential for civil war to break out with the HSV cars and the HRT cars making contact, let alone both HSV cars running into each other.
And plenty of contact too on the track, which we're seeing. Jason Bright, the luck does not run with that team at the moment. They're out, steering rack failure.
Shocker. Look,
Stop it. Stop the air.
He needs foot on the brake here.
Go.
You can hear the tone in Rob Crawford's voice. It's just amazing how quickly things can change in this business. They went into this race with a comfortable position, race cars that were running near the front. Hard to lay a glove on Winterbottom and FPR at the moment, but well and truly clear of their rivals. And double contact for Rick Kelly, slow stop for Garth Tander, problem with the shift cut. That's the mechanism that allows him to use the flat shifting mechanism in the gearbox, and there's the incident earlier that damaged the back of John Bow's car that required the mechanical black flag to fix it, bring him in and fix it. And they obviously have a big drama there when there's that much of the bumper flapping. Meantime,
Mark Winterbottom's playing his own game. You know, it's interesting in the championship hunt, you've got the two toll guys, the two 888 guys almost playing a game of doubles tennis, and it's advantage them, advantage us. And on another court, Mark Winterbottom's going solo.
Boy, Toll HSV just can't take a trick today. Garth Tander's in the pits there. The trouble with the wheel nut was that Garth didn't have his foot on the brake, so the rear axle's spinning as they're trying to get the wheels off, and the team are just shaking their heads saying, come on, you got to help us.
It's that pressure end of the season that I've talked about, and look at this, some contact between Shane Price and Greg Murphy. Jason Bargwanna in here as well. Turns 1, 2, 3 and 4, and Shane having a run up the inside here. And Murph gets set out to the AstroTurf on the outside of turn 4. That pressure end of the season is all about trying to manage the downside. It's a given that 888 and Toll HSV have got good car speed and good drivers. It's more about how you just manage the way through the weekends, of course. And for both teams this weekend, a remarkable turn of events. 888 were strong on practice day Thursday, and it was the HSV guys that were having a battle, and then it kind of reversed in qualifying with HSV to the fore and both the 888 cars not making it into the top 10. Then the race yesterday was a disaster for Team Vodafone, and now this one's tough for the HSV blokes. James Courtney still in control, 9-second margin over Stephen Richards. They're playing a slightly longer game at the moment. Paul Morris recovering also.
Okay, so just be mindful, you hopefully will come out in front of the pack. Copy.
Morris had good car speed, but didn't get to show it in that incident as a result of the problems between turns 4 and 5 in race 1. How'd you like to insert yourself into that group of angry young men?
I reckon you'd be better off just parking it and waiting for everyone to go. So this is Price versus Murphy. About a lap or so ago, and that's the view from Jason Bargwanna's car. So Murphy went from in front of Price to behind Bargwanna.
And that AstroTurf on the left-hand side of the road is new for 07. Try and discourage the cars from running out there, which they were doing last year, kind of jumping off the track, trying to make a little time advantage, because there's very little grip on it because it's nylon. Winterbottom's up to 8th. Remember, there's still those that haven't done their compulsory stop. Courtney, Richards, Morris, Owen, Jason Richards, Cam McConville. Although Jason's just done his, of course, we saw that. Todd Kelly making a move here on Jason Bargwanna. Still trying to get our heads around the Chevrolet badging on that car as Courtney comes in. Actually, that looks worse than it really is. Just a little
Gonna be tight on there.
fracture in the...
Wait.
Just watching what's going on here. They're going to have to try and pull that guard off the wheel, and they're also looking at car number 22. There's a loose mirror on Todd Kelly's car.
Whoa. There you go. Will Davison turns it into turn 1. Courtney's coming out, exiting pit lane, and the inevitable happened.
Not sure what they all ate last night.
Angry Pils,
on cold
I reckon.
tyres, do your best.
Craig Lowndes is one of them. He's 4th in the title race. But on the road in race 2 here, he's leading those who are left, if you know what I mean. So he's going to get more points at the moment than Garth Tander, than Rick Kelly, and than Jamie Whincup. He's making some good time too. He's pushed himself up into a top 10 position. 3 drivers yet to pit. They are Stephen Richards, Paul Morris and Steve Owen. Mark Winterbottom, the leader of the pack. So I reckon Craig Lowndes is going to end up inside the top 10 once all those pit stops are completed. He'll be about 7th. And remember, he started from, 30th.
It's on here because Lowndes is having a run at Ingle, and this is a huge recovery from Craig Lowndes. It's going to keep him in the championship game. And he's on the wrong side here for the left-hander at turn 6. But he's crisscrossing now, and I think Russell's really battling for grip. In fact, how easy was that? Textbook. And the stewards and the IPO have investigated the incident between cars 1 and 16 at turn 1, and no breach of the rules found, so no internal penalty there.
we're seeing bits and pieces flail off the cars all over everywhere. When Steve Johnson from Jim B Racing came into the pits, he threw something out of the car. It was this, his window vent with the contact with Rick Kelly and Garth Tander. That popped out onto his lap, and he had to drive around a few laps sitting that rattling around the car. That's what he threw out on the ground, boys.
I thought it was the ashtray.
So here's Courtney. He's ahead of Will Davison. Courtney corrected position second. Davison third. Stephen Johnson rather will be fourth. Stephen Richards, Paul Morris is just pulled into the pits. Stephen Owen still out there. There's Morris now rejoining.
Be curious to know whether or not there's likely to be any investigation on the James Courtney, Will Davison turn one thing as well. Based on probably what we just noted between cars 1 and 16, they may not do anything, but when James came out the pit lane, there was a pretty heavy crunch with Will, and they may not see that in favourable terms. We'll wait and see.
Maybe the IPO's just got, they're doing a pretty good job of harming themselves.
That's right, I think everybody's that's right, issuing their own penalties at the moment, smacking themselves. So let's make sense of this championship, if possible.
I thought you were going to say make sense of the race.
No,
I was just about to leave.
Yeah, that's not possible. So of the championship contenders, the highest placed fellow at the moment is Craig Lowndes. Next in that queue is Rick Kelly. So Lowndes is just shuffling up the order 7th at the moment as the remaining cars stop for their compulsory stop. Stephen Richards the only one to be done now. So Lowndes effectively 6th once Stephen has stopped.
Rick will be in the points as well because he'll be inside the top 15.
Yeah,
Garth
he'll be
Tander
12th.
and Jamie Whincup are well and truly out of that picture. Well, Whincup's the closest. He's in 18th.
And so we need to break out the abacus again and see what that does.
Well, put it this way. This is what's happening. The guy who's 4th on the list of the championship race is Craig Lowndes. He's in the hunt for more points here. The guy who's 3rd on the list is next in the list for points. The guy who's 2nd, Jamie Whincup. So it's a reverse order.
Effectively means, I'm trying to just crunch it into simplicity.
Means nothing to the top 2 and a little bit to the bottom.
That's right, it just closes them all up. So, and that's the important message. So half a race to run here for race 2, another one to come for race 3, and then another 6 races between Tassie and Phillip Island.
So Jason Bargwanna's at the front of this one. There's John Bow, Greg Murphy and Todd Kelly behind him. Bow is out of the loop.
Good job, Bar. Currently 40 laps down, mate. Let's get a little bit of room. Let's sort of get away from this back as we can, bud.
There you go. Bargwanna is 10th. Murphy is 11th. Todd 12th.
Neil, you're just questioning that come together between James Courtney and Will Davison. Just had a chat to the race stewards here, and they say no further investigation into that one.
Okay. And a little bit of contact between the brothers Kelly here. Both Todd and Rick were banging doors down at turn 1. So, speaking of banging doors, this time Paul Morris on, Todd Kelly. So I think it's fair to say, if I think this through, that all the cars from Clayton have managed to run into each other today.
Okay, mate, stay calm. We'll put it in, pal, we'll put it in.
And meanwhile, Mark Winterbottom must be out the front, just laughing in his helmet. As a result of that contact now, Paul Morris has a little bit of trouble on the front left.
Come in, pissing out smoke everywhere.
And there's you can see the mirror on the right-hand side, driver's side is hanging down. So
That was already gone.
yeah, and there's a bit of extra damage there. Todd's saying there's a heap of smoke. Is that him peeling off now? I think it might be up the top of the pit lane there. Stephen Richards hangs in there, still hasn't taken his compulsory stop. Let's have a look here again. This is Rick on his brother Todd.
where he lost the driver's side mirror, and then Paul Morris comes into the picture, goes, bam!
Tags the right rear. And that all really started at turn 1 between cars 1 and 22.
It's a popular meeting place, turn 4. Stephen Richards, 22.3 seconds ahead of Mark Winterbottom. Richards, though, still has to pull into pit lane. What's the tour time in pit lane?
45 seconds. So it'll put him back in the back end of the top 10. Maybe just outside it, but it's still a very good recovery.
It's a very, very good turnaround of events because he started from 25th. We're on lap 17. Meanwhile, as I said at the very, very top, their main game remains the same for these guys. Put them anywhere, I'll find somebody to fight. And right now, Craig Lowndes has the job of trying to loop up Dean Canto.
He's got a little run on him here, using the aero advantage tucked under the back of the car, and this time he does get through on Dean Canto. Dean will try and crisscross here because Craig had the big deep dive. Tries to hang on to position through 6, but he'll hold the ideal line now through 7. 160 odd Ks here, back to 180, 185, and then down to the second gear right-hand at turn 8. Oh, Craig's run very wide here, and that'll be the incentive that Dean needs to have another go on the inside of 9.
So that was for position 6. Which will be worth another one when Stephen Richards comes in. Smoke billowing out of Paul Morris, and Scaife goes in there facing the wrong way.
And Morris's car also had a huge front lock up there, front left, I think it was.
I think that's the result of that.
Oh, is it?
That's still the result
just
of
the
that
contact on the guard. And I think Todd Kelly was also complaining about more contact with Paul Morris. Oh, here we go. The pictures will tell the story here. So same corner, turn 4.
Well, if you like a bit of push and shove in the V8s, I reckon you'd be enjoying today. What's the order? Stephen Richards, Mark Winterbottom, James Courtney, Will Davison, Stephen Johnson, Craig Lowndes, Dean Canto, Ingalls, Shane Price and Jason Barguana make up our top 10. And there's Jamie Whincup. He's back in 16th, so 1 position out of the points for the championship leader. Remember, he's got 0 points at the moment after a DNF in race 1. It was the same for Lowndes. Jamie Whincup now has to work through some of the back markers to get himself up there. He's got around Simon Wills. So that's job done there. He'll put 2 points next to his name at least.
To go, mate. Head down.
So Stephen Richards hanging on at the moment. Compulsory pit stop window closes on lap 22. On lap 19, so shortly Stephen's going to have to come off. He's got a 19-second margin. Whincup just only managing to pull that car up at turn 1.
The communications are running hot in race control at the moment. The Holden Racing team sent a message up to have that contact investigated between Paul Morris and Todd Kelly. Race control has come back and said there'll be no further action against Paul Morris.
Jason Richards is the next target for Jamie Whincup on the road.
Just looking at that car carefully, because of the damage to the back of it, the boot lid, look at the angle that the rear wing's on. It's on a massive tilt down on the left side, up on the right side, so that's not going to be helping the behaviour of the car. Look at that. In a business where a few millimetres make a huge difference in car behaviour, it's not helping.
You I should have set up a spare panel shop.
Yes. Actually, that will be an issue because they'll be starting to run out of stuff. It might be half a chance that we see this car in the third race, sporting colours from one of the other Ford teams, because there'll be a lot of people in this paddock who are beginning to battle for spares. Whincup is 15th at the moment, and here's the man effectively who'll lead the race. Winterbottom is 18 seconds behind his teammate Stephen Richards now, so he's peeling time out of him. I imagine that Stephen's going to insert somewhere around Russell Ingall in that sort of 8th, 9th position.
Rick Kelly is in 12th. Pretty good time to go for a ride. So takes it up the hill towards turn 8.
It's a 4th gear approach. You can see just how much they've got to come out of the throttle. Then it's a huge brake back to 2nd gear. Quite slow at the apex there, just 100 Ks. And then all these flat shifts that you're hearing up to 5th gear, it'll be about 250 odd Ks in the run to 9. Little pressure check to make sure the brake pedal pressure's up. And this is turn 9, and then this final little kink here at turn 10 brings you back onto the straight. And Rick's using the clutch to get it across the gate from 2nd to 3rd, and then just flat shifting all the way down the straight. 6th gear, 275 odd kilometres an hour at the end. It's 1st gear here. Look how carefully he applies the throttle, just feeds against the wheel spin. Then 2nd gear, look how slow it is, like driving on a semi-wet track. Just slowly applies the throttle. This is turn 4 where all the trouble's been. And again, look at the very gentle throttle application. It takes him 75 metres, 100 metres before he's got 100% throttle, and then it's 5th gear, 250 kilometres an hour. This parallels the front straights right behind the pit complex, then turning left and heading up the hill. And that's the completed lap. It's fascinating to watch because the footwork tells a lot of the story here of just how delicate you've got to be with the throttle around this racetrack. There's a lot of damage on the back of that thing. It looks pretty second-hand, doesn't it?
It doesn't look pretty.
Now Richo's finally done his stop. See where he pops
Cars
back
are going
out.
to come out are going to be Ingall and or Price.
So that's exactly what we were guessing before. So it's going to be behind Russell, in front of Shane Price, who I have to say is having a really good weekend this weekend in the Jack Daniels entry for Perkins Motorsport. And Shane and young Jack are continuing to log valuable miles and come to terms with the incredibly complex task of meeting and beating some of the best operators in the business.
There, any damage? We'll get, is the steering arm bent in the front? We'll get the front wheels off and have a look. Did you hear the whole thing I just said? Just try a rebound, send it back out if you want to rear.
They're just going to try a rear shock absorber.
Do it, mate. We are not allowed to do it. We will check for damage, but we are not allowed to adjust the car.
Just been into the 888 bunker to check out their toy box to see if they've got enough spares and panels and parts to fix the Whincup car. Yes, they have, for one last dip, and then that's it.
Surveying the damage at Holden Racing Team for Todd Kelly. Putting valuable points in the bank for the championship. Mark Winterbottom is our race leader. James Courtney and Will Davison positions 2 and 3. Stephen Johnson 4th. And then we find Lowndes, bigpondsport.com. Check it out. And check in with all the V8 Supercar news and videos, of course. Also keep up to speed with the horse racing because the Melbourne Cup coming our way on 7.
A bad sportsmanship flag's been shown to Lee Holdsworth in car number 33 for continually putting 4 wheels off the racetrack. So he's on a warning now, has to be a bit careful. That the order is Mark Winterbottom, James Courtney. That margin is 10.3 seconds. Then Will Davison, Stephen Johnson. So the Jim Beam cars continue to run well, third and fourth. Lowndes, a remarkable comeback, fifth from the back of the grid. Dean Canto, sixth, then Russell Ingall, Stephen Richards, and that's a very good performance from Stephen as well. Shane Price, Jason Barguana, they're continuing to show lots of top 10 promise in the WPS entry. Murphy 11th, then Rick Kelly 12th. So from a championship perspective, Lowndes is the one that's popped out the side of the rubble in reasonable shape, fifth. And then the next fellow in the queue who's grabbing some points here is Rick Kelly 12th. And then looking further down the order, off the board. Oh no, Jamie Whincup is 23rd at the moment. Oh sorry, I've skipped over Tander, who's 17th. So Tander's 17th and Whincup is 23rd. So only two of the four championship contenders grabbing points in this race at the moment.
What it means, Neil, is that Tander and Whincup haven't moved yet in race 2 on points, but Lowndes and Kelly have, as you said, and they're now equal on 486 points.
And there's only a 26-point spread between first and fourth. So the effect of all of this activity here in Bahrain, whoa, speaking of activity, do you reckon it's a bit dusty off the race line? Jack Perkins there.
The effect is that the championship picture is closing in.
That's right, it's closed up and it's been a seesaw of advantage, disadvantage. Bit of touching down at turn 1, no big deal.
So Garth has now put himself into 16th, judging by that. Puts him one spot.
16, 7 to go.
That's right.
Really good job.
Puts him one spot out of the points for this race.
And he's got a fair margin to the next car. And that car is Simon Wills in the Team BOC entry. Winterbottom's got tremendous pace, hasn't he, in the FPR car this weekend. He's got a 10.3 second margin over James Courtney. And there goes Stephen Richards on Russell Ingall. That was pretty easy, wasn't it? 8th for 7th. Although he doesn't hang on to it because he might have outbraked himself down there, Stephen, and he has. So it wasn't that easy.
Not over yet. Turn 8. I'll take it back, thanks. So
remember that Stephen's got much younger rear tyres on his car, so he should have a mid-corner and traction advantage over Russell at this phase of the race. That looks spooky, and it did to Russell too, because he eventually had to grab more brake pressure in order to not drill the back of the Castrol Ford, and then look, the recovery cost him 60, 70 metres. And that will release Richo now, so he's up to 7th. Next in the queue for him is Dean Canto, and he may get there because he's going to have pretty good car pace with those rear tyres for a couple of laps at least.
we just haven't heard boo from the Ford Performance Racing crew. They haven't had any reason to do any counselling. As Richo slides it around.
They used all of that up at Bathurst.
6 laps to go. 6 laps to go. You've got 2 seconds to the car in front.
From pole position to victory in race 1. From P1 to a comfortable lead yet again here in race 2. Behind him, a whole host of carnage. James Courtney is 10 seconds adrift. Will Davison in 3rd. Stephen Johnson is in 4th position. And Will Davison is heading for his best sprint round race finish.
He's been threatening, hasn't he? He's shown lots of promise at various points during the season. They've found something with their cars. They're definitely consistently quick now, and not just at any one racetrack, at a whole bunch of tracks. It's a good run here for James as well. 10.1 seconds, so unlikely that he's going to be able to do much. But they had a
Show me there.
little problem with inlet manifold butterflies yesterday, just sticking on the Geldwen car, and that hurt him in the mid-corner trying to slow the car because it's effectively dragging the throttle. Steve Owens down in 27th, so he moves well to the right, gives James the space that he needs on the racing line. And breaks early for him, so very courteous there for Steve Owen.
Take a look at the top 5 here, probably, of Winterbottom, Courtney, Davison, Johnson and Lowndes. Dean Canto, the leading Holden, at 6th. For those guys there, especially for the FPR guys and the DJR guys, they've really made such a big impact. Take out the bad luck for Winterbottom and Richo. Made such a big impact over the course of the last 3-4 rounds from Sandown on. That's where the push started.
Just popped into Garth Tanderland, boys, into Toll HSV. We heard earlier that Garth was complaining that the shift cut wasn't working. That doesn't enable him to do the flat shifting up through the gearbox. Just popped into the team and said, has Garth complained any more problems with the car? Apparently none. He's either learnt to adapt or it's miraculously fixed itself.
It's one of those things you can work around it, Daniel. It's just if it's something that you've become comfortable in, it's a bit of an inconvenience. So I'm sure he's just figured out a way of getting around it. That's Adrian Burgess, team manager for Dick Johnson Racing in the Jim Beam squad, and they'll be pretty happy, I think, with this performance in 3rd and 4th for their cars running nose to tail. But there's been a whisker between these two fellas at different times during the year. Really impressive consistency between both of them. You know, good fast cars, good fast drivers pushing each other, and every now and again one will have the half a tenth or a tenth of a second advantage, but very little between them for the majority of the year.
Jason Richards just got around Paul Morris there for 13th.
And John Bow's been shown the blue flags as well, just so that he doesn't get messed up. Remember, he had to come into the pit lane with the mechanical black flag because of the bodywork hanging from that car, and he toured off the edge of the circuit with the contact that he had. This is a pretty vigorous battle between Paul Morris and Jason Richards here. Now Paul's got the inside run down to turn 1. Damage on the front left of his car means that from an aero standpoint the car won't be as nice as he'd like. Jason very, very deep on brakes, kind of rode around the berm on the outside like a motocross bike and sort of survived on the racetrack. Wasn't orthodox, but it got the job done.
I think Paul took a bit of defensive action there and just jumped on it on the brake just in case more trouble was heading his way. Now Rick Kelly is in 12th position, so he's in the points. Garth Tanner in 15th position, so he's just in the points. Craig Lowndes in 5th, well and truly in the points. And the other guy in the championship picture is Jamie Whincup, 23rd.
So Garth Tander over Lowndes and Kelly. We'll just run through them for you at the moment. Of course, this is all subject to change. But Tander with 514, Jamie Whincup with 501.
Remaining at 2, remaining 4.5.
Both Craig and Rick have got 486, so it's a 28-point margin from 1st to 4th. So it's opened up a couple of points since we last mentioned it because of Garth's progress through the field. 28 points is not much after all these races. This is the 30th race of our championship season. There's still 4 top runners in this battle. And it took so long for this young bloke to finally get the win on the board that he's so desperately wanted through the championship season. And now it looks like he might put 2 together one day apart, and that's fantastic. And as Matty outlined earlier, 9 race winners in 2007. Garth Tander heads that queue, followed by Craig Lowndes. And Winterbottom actually made me stop and think yesterday because I was sure that he'd won a race, but we've seen him so competitive so many times during the year. It looks like he's going to close the deal this weekend as the chairman of ProDrive, David Richards, looks on.
Assuming Winterbottom does this final lap comfortably, and there's no reason to assume otherwise, it'll be only the 2nd time in this season that Ford has won 2 races on a weekend in a sprint round. Craig Lowndes did it in Darwin, races 2 and 3. Of course, only Garth Tander is the only man all season to have done the clean sweep. He did it in WA, he did it again in Queensland. He was on target for it in Indy, and Stephen Richards put paid to that in race 3. Now Winterbottom's gone pole. Victory race 1. Almost certain victory in race 2. Just like you said, Neil, you know, some things, if the balls that have bounced a couple of different ways over the course of the last few rounds, Mark Winterbottom would have been in the championship fight. There is Tander in 15th. If we can round up Paul Morris on this final lap, it's worth an extra point in the bank. Doesn't sound like much when everybody else is inside the top 4 of the championship fight, is throwing down the challenges. Everything's worth it. James Courtney comes across, but the checkered flag has already waved for Mark Winterbottom, who's done it again, 2 out of 2. Will Davison, 3rd. His best finish of the year.
Lowndes wasn't far away from Stephen Johnson in the end, was he? Then it's a big gap back to Stephen Richards, 6th. Dean Canto, 7th. Russell Ingall on his own there in 8th. Shane Price. Jason Bargwana, 9th and 10th. Tim Edwards there. And David Richards. Clinton Wilson, engineer for Mark Winterbottom. All very proud of their achievement in race 2. Carbon copy of what they did yesterday, and puts them in the perfect position to start race number 3.
So far ahead of them. He was 10 seconds ahead of them at the race finish, and Frosty does it again in the heat. Just so much confidence for this young man, for this race, for this event. He'd be hoping that race 3 starts straight away. I reckon he'd just rather grid up and get going again.
That's right.
Drop the flag, I'm ready. So an all-Ford podium for race 3. Stephen Johnson 4th, Lowndes 5th, Stephen Richards 6th, Dean Canto, the best of the Holdens, in 7th.
Down to meet you then.